The Eight Immortals Travel East, Chapter 26.
Imagine a hero who treats stopping a localized apocalypse with the casual energy of swatting a mosquito.
Right.
But then he turns around and spends 6 months running up a massive bar tab just to see what happens to the bartender.
Yeah, if you're catching up on folklore or, just insanely curious about ancient narratives that completely upend modern logic, you are absolutely in the perfect place.
Definitely. Today, we're unpacking Chapter 26 of a classic text called Journey to the East.
Also known as Dongyuji.
Right, Dongyuji. Fascinating, honestly, kind of contradictory adventures of a wandering Taoist immortal named Dongbin.
Because by looking closely at two very different tales in this chapter, one features rapid, violent justice, and the other acts as this bizarre, slow burn test of character, we can uncover how this text views
Power, morality, and the inherently fleeting nature of wealth, right?
Yeah.
The contrast between these two stories is what hooked me immediately. So, to really grasp what Dongbin is doing, we have to start with the monster. Let's establish his baseline capabilities for the listener.
Well, to understand the text's philosophy, you first need to understand Dongbin's pedigree.
Okay.
The narrative tells us he learned the Tao from a master named Yunfang. But perhaps more relevant to his immediate arrival on the scene, he learned sword arts from the fire dragon Zenrin.
The fire dragon Zenrin? That is an intense title.
Yeah, a Zenrin in the Taoist tradition translates roughly to a true person or perfected immortal.
Right.
So Dongbin isn't just spiritually enlightened, he's packing serious heat.
He possesses an unimaginably lethal skill set.
Exactly.
Which turns out to be entirely necessary because his travels bring him to the Yunguai region, and the situation there is just catastrophic.
Completely out of hand.
Right. The area is being terrorized by a creature called a Jiao. It's essentially a massive flood dragon or like a malevolent water spirit. And the text doesn't shy away from the horrific details of what this thing is actually doing to the people.
No, it doesn't. The
Yeah.
Jiao is entirely upending the natural and civic order. It's conjuring violent, unseasonal storms.
Right.
It is sinking shipping vessels and outright destroying residential homes along the riverbanks. The local economy and infrastructure just collapsing under the weight of this localized natural disaster.
And it goes beyond infrastructure. The monster is actively targeting the population.
Right, the assaults.
Yeah, it's transforming into a human man coming ashore and assaulting local women. And after these attacks, the women fall mysteriously ill and pass away.
It is a reign of absolute terror.
It is. The local officials are backed into a corner. They're setting bounties, posting notices everywhere, and conducting these elaborate rituals. They're practically begging the heavens to send down a savior.
Because they are pulling every bureaucratic and spiritual lever available to humanity. But the situation has escalated way beyond human intervention.
Right.
The jowl isn't just a tough animal. It is a distortion of the natural balance, so it requires a metaphysical solution.
Enter Dongbin. He walks right up to these frantic officials and calmly tells them, I can fix this. Don't worry.
Just supreme confidence.
Right. He doesn't ask for troops. He doesn't formulate a battle plan. He just steps up to the water, draws his sword, shouts a command, and simply hurls the blade directly into the river.
The efficiency of the violence is what's really striking here. There is no protracted struggle or epic monologue.
It takes maybe 5 seconds.
Yeah.
The text describes the river turning instantly blood red. The giant, lifeless body of the monster floats to the surface. And this is the part that totally blew my mind, the sword magically leaps right out of the water and slides perfectly back into Dongbin's scabbard.
It's quite the visual.
When I was reading this, the only comparison I could make was like a high-tech heat-seeking drone.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Right. He locks onto the target, deploys the weapon, the strike is surgical and instant, and the drone just autonomously returns to base. It's completely effortless. But this is exactly where my brain hits a wall with this narrative.
Let's unpack the friction there. What's bothering you about the resolution?
It's his reaction to the victory.
Oh, yeah?
He solves this massive region-destroying crisis instantly. The town is saved. The officials are ecstatic. They immediately offer him mountains of gold and fine silk, the standard expected bounty for a hero.
Which is standard, yes.
But he actively rejects it. He refuses the money, gives them a cryptic fake name, calling himself Taoist Hui, and just walks away. Why?
Right.
Why do the ultimate heroes work, taking down a literal monster, only to aggressively reject the hero's welcome?
Well, by refusing the gold and adopting a fake identity, Dongbin is actually establishing a core tenet of Taoist philosophy for the reader.
Okay, how so?
He intervenes not to gain status or to become wealthy or even to be remembered. He intervenes solely to restore natural balance.
The balance, right.
The Jiao was an aberration causing chaos. Dongbin removed the chaos. For him, the equation is solved.
So accepting the reward would essentially undo the purity of the action.
Exactly, it would tether him. In this philosophical framework, accepting gold or fame weaves you into the transactional fabric of human society.
Which he doesn't want.
No, it creates debts, expectations, and a public persona you then have to maintain. He has already transcended the material world. Taking the gold would be a step backward.
Wow.
It establishes for you, the listener, that his immense power is matched only by his total lack of worldly attachment.
That makes the next phase of his journey feel even more jarring, to be honest.
It does.
Because he isn't motivated by wealth or the adrenaline of slaying monsters, his focus shifts entirely. He goes from seeking out a great evil to destroy to wandering around trying to find a pure good heart to elevate.
Right, he travels to a place called Hanyang to do this.
And his methodology for finding this pure heart is highly unconventional.
To say the least.
He decides the best way to gauge the spiritual health of the population is to wander the streets and countryside handing out fruit.
And according to the text, he deems every single person in the entire county unworthy.
Yeah, he finds absolutely no one who meets his standard. So he abandons the fruit strategy entirely when he comes across a wine shop run by a man named Shin.
The narrative pivot here takes us from an explosive fantasy action sequence straight into a grueling psychological endurance test.
It really does. So Dongbin walks into Shin's wine shop, sits down, drinks heavily, and then simply stands up and leaves without paying his bill.
Just walks out.
Just walks out. And he doesn't just pull this stunt once. He repeats this exact routine, draining the shop's inventory and walking out on the tab every single day for half a year, 6 full months.
And the crucial detail the text emphasizes is Shin's reaction. Throughout those entire 6 months, the shop owner never asks Dongbin for a single coin.
Not once.
He never complains, he never cuts him off, he never even brings it up.
I have to call a timeout on the logic of this test because it feels like a bizarre precursor to a show like Undercover Boss.
Right.
You know, the CEO wears a bad disguise to see which employees are inherently good. But look at his metric for a pure heart. Relentless freeloading.
It's an extreme metric.
I keep trying to apply this to modern life. If someone comes into my business and consumes my product for 6 months without paying, and I just sit there and smile, I'm not a spiritual paragon, I'm a pushover.
Sure.
I'm a terrible business owner with no boundaries. Is the moral of this ancient text seriously that we should just let people walk all over us?
That is the exact tension the text wants you to feel. You are applying a modern capitalistic boundary to a story about spiritual transcendence.
Okay.
Think back to what Dongbin just did in the previous story. He refused mountains of gold. He operates completely outside the logic of commerce. He's looking for someone else who shares that detachment.
So he's seeing if Shin cares about money.
It goes deeper than just not caring about money.
Mm-hmm.
He is testing Shin's detachment from the concept of transaction itself.
The concept of transaction.
Yeah. We live in a world governed by transactional logic. I provide you a service, you owe me compensation. If you don't pay me, a debt is formed, and with that debt comes resentment. Shin's lack of expectation is the massive anomaly Dongbin was searching for.
Which explains why handing out fruit didn't work. Anyone can accept a free piece of fruit and look like a nice person.
Exactly the point. Passive charity is easy. But quietly absorbing a daily loss to your livelihood for 6 months without letting it poison your mood, that requires a radical form of acceptance.
Radical acceptance.
Jin isn't just gritting his teeth and suppressing his anger. The text implies he genuinely allows the situation to unfold without trying to force a transactional outcome. That total lack of greed, that absence of friction with reality is the pure heart.
Okay, so Jin passes this excruciating 6-month vibe check. And because he endures this without succumbing to resentment, Dongbin finally decides it's time to settle the tab.
Right.
And this leads to his utterly unique, highly unconventional method of repayment.
We return to the realm of magic. The mechanics of it are fundamentally different from the river monster incident.
Very different. Dongbin pulls the bartender aside and says, I owe you a massive debt that I cannot repay with regular money.
Which is incredibly ironic.
Right, considering he turned down an entire region's treasury just a few chapters ago.
Right.
He has access to limitless wealth, but he chooses to pay Shin differently.
He takes a leftover piece of orange peel.
Yeah. He walks over to the blank wall of the wine shop, and using only this piece of discarded fruit skin, he draws the image of a crane on the wall.
A completely mundane, overlooked object.
Yes, literal garbage.
Yeah.
And the payoff is spectacular. Dongbin tells Jin, whenever you have guests in the shop, call out to this crane. He promises that the drawn crane will physically detach itself from the wall, fly down into the room, and perform a myriad of dances for the patrons before returning to its two-dimensional form on the plaster.
It's pure magic.
He tells Jin this will make you rich in a few years, and then he simply leaves.
And the prediction materializes just as he said.
It works perfectly. Word spreads and people start flocking from all over the province to witness this magical, interactive art piece. The wine shop is packed every single night, and Shin becomes unimaginably wealthy.
He gets his reward.
My initial reaction to this was purely analytical from a business perspective. It's like a 16th century viral marketing stunt.
Oh, totally.
It's the ultimate experiential retail attraction. You guarantee foot traffic for life. But taking a step back, I keep getting stuck on the mechanics of it. Why an orange peel?
That's the real question.
We establish he's a magical master who uses expertly forged weapons. Could he not conjure a brush and ink? Does the orange peel signify something specific?
Your instinct to focus on the tool is spot on, and we need to redirect that modern business analogy back into the Taoist framework.
Okay.
The orange peel isn't a random choice. It's a demonstration of the Taoist concept of wu wei, or effortless action. Compare the two acts of magic we've seen.
Slaying the monster and paying the bar tab.
Exactly. Think about the sword. A sword is a rigid human invention. It requires intense heat, hammering, and forceful intervention to create.
Right, it's forged.
It is a tool designed to sever and destroy, which is what he needed to eliminate the chaotic water spirit. But an orange peel is organic. It's a natural byproduct. It requires zero forceful intent to exist.
So he uses a forged weapon for destruction and an organic byproduct for creation.
Yes, it demonstrates absolute mastery over the material world. To a true immortal, the material itself is irrelevant. The power is in the alignment with the Tao.
That makes so much sense.
He doesn't need rare, magical artifacts to generate miracles. He can pull infinite potential out of something society has deemed as trash. He brings death to an aberration using metal. He brings vibrant life, art, and prosperity to a pure-hearted man using a discarded piece of fruit.
That reframes the entire sequence. It's not just a cool magic trick. It's a profound statement on where true power comes from.
It's effortless.
It's effortless, and the result is undeniable. Shin gets his reward. He's rich, his business is booming, and he's completely secure.
Right.
If this were a standard fairy tale, this is the exact moment the narrator would say happily ever after. But the text pushes past the happy ending into something much heavier.
The final act of this story introduces a melancholic turn that forces you to reconsider the ultimate goal of the Taoist path.
It's a severe left turn. So one day, after Shin has enjoyed this massive wealth for some time, Dongbin finally returns to the shop.
And Jin is overjoyed.
He is. He is so grateful for what Dongbin did that he throws a lavish, grand feast to welcome him back. And during this celebration, Dongbin looks at him and asks a very simple, direct question. He asks, "Do you have enough?"
Which is perhaps the most difficult question a human being can be asked to answer honestly.
Yeah, but Shin doesn't hesitate. He replies, "More than enough." He is entirely satisfied. He has reached the pinnacle of material comfort.
He's content.
Upon hearing this, Dongbin doesn't offer a speech or a grand farewell. He simply takes out his flute and plays it 3 times.
And then the magic ends.
At the sound of those notes, the magical crane peels itself off the wall for the very last time. It lands in front of Dongbin. Dongbin mounts the bird, rides it up into the empty sky, and disappears into the clouds forever.
Leaving the wealthy bartender standing on the ground.
Exactly. And the story tells us that to commemorate this unbelievable, life-altering event, Shin builds a massive structure on that exact spot, naming it the Yellow Crane Tower.
Right.
But the text doesn't end with a description of the architecture. It ends by sharing a famous poem written by an anonymous poet who later visited the tower. And the imagery in this poem is incredibly heavy.
I'd argue the poem is the key to unlocking the entire narrative. What specific imagery stands out to you?
Well, the poet writes with this intense sense of lamentation. They describe how the Ancient One has ridden away on the yellow crane, leaving nothing behind but an empty tower. It notes that the crane never returns, leaving only empty white clouds lingering in the sky for 1,000 years. The poet then looks around at the physical world. They see the distinct, beautiful trees of Hanyang and the lush, fragrant grass of Parrot Island.
All this natural beauty.
Yeah, but despite all this natural beauty, the poet looks out at the misty river at dusk and is overcome by a profound existential sadness, wondering where their true hometown really is.
It is a devastatingly beautiful articulation of spiritual longing.
But the emotional whiplash is intense. We just spent the whole story watching a humble, patient guy get rewarded with a magical dancing crane that made him a millionaire.
Right, a fun success story.
It was fun and triumphant. Why end a story about patience and success on such a lonely, sorrowful note? Why intentionally make the reader feel sad about a happy ending?
Because the text is trying to tell you that material success was never the actual point. The poem recontextualizes the entire journey. Look at the thematic progression. First, Dongbin rejects unlimited wealth after killing the monster, showing it has no value to him. Then, he tests Xin to see if Xin can exist without the friction of greed.
Right.
When Xin proves his pure heart, Dongbin gives him the wealth. But the very second Xin declares, "I have more than enough," the magic vanishes.
It's almost as if the wealth was just a stepping stone.
Exactly. The wealth and the magical crane were always designed to be temporary. The true Taoist path isn't about accumulating comfortable things, even if those things are magical.
Right.
The path is about constant transcendence, moving on, letting go. Xin achieved material perfection. But humanity, represented by that anonymous poet standing in the tower, looks up at the empty sky and realizes a terrifying truth.
That the money isn't enough?
Precisely. Once you have witnessed true, effortless immortality, a man riding a painted crane into the heavens, a physical world loses its luster. The lush grass, the beautiful trees, the gold coins in the cash register, they suddenly feel hollow. The vastness of those empty white clouds and the misty river at dusk make human economic concerns feel incredibly trivial.
Because there's something bigger out there.
Right. The tower isn't a monument to Sin's successful business. It is a monument to the profound realization that mankind is trapped on the ground, longing for a transcendent connection that just flew away.
Leaving only an empty tower. That gives me chills. The poem is a realization that we are all just sitting here, surrounded by our stuff, looking up at the clouds.
Exactly.